Joy and purpose.
Joy and
purpose. This has been on my heart and my mission for a number of years for different reasons. And my husband's been, he's also a coach, and he's been encouraging me, when you meet someone,
yes,
tell them what you do, tell them who you are, because you never know. And I haven't been doing that. I meet them, I'm from Charleston, this and that. But I just met you, and I knew to tell you, like, this is my mission also. So I didn't know, I had no idea that you had a podcast or how we would help one another, but I knew that I needed to tell you. I speak to women about joy and purpose so that they can move into their next steps, like with a boldness and a confidence, because it's something I've had to work with, and God has really worked with me on. I think we have some things to talk about there.
And you know what? That what you're doing with joy and a purpose is telling the men and women out there that there's no time to quit. There's no option to quit. The joy of the Lord and knowing your purpose will get you back up and keep you moving.
It is the fuel. And it is the fuel that comes from the heart that gives us the strength, when we are feeling like we are going to be crushed.
Right.
So we were talking about that today. How do we stop ourselves from feeling like we're crushed and we have no hope? Well, we do that by being ready. And when this happened to me, where I was about to give up and I was feeling crushed, my story was in 2020. Like everyone, I'd lost a job, and I had been divorced, and I'd moved into this apartment, and I needed this job, and I was the last woman in, so I was the first woman out. And, of course, like everyone, I was home in the pandemic, and I was doing some movement, and I discovered that something was wrong. I discovered I had a tumor.
Oh my.
Then it's 2020, discover that I need to go to the hospital. I have 2 surgeries. I have a cancerous tumor. And in 2020, when you went to the hospital, you went by yourself.
That's right. No one.
People waited in the parking lot. And so I was feeling like, this is it. I've come this far, but I had no hope. So I really want people that you minister to, that get this podcast, to know that there is hope.
Yes.
How does that come? My sister had a moment with me. I call it your on the floor, on your knees moment. And I just remember, she's a woman of God. She said, you're going to have to make a choice. And that choice is, do you want to just accept this is where you are, accept, you have friends, you have grandchildren, maybe this is it, but whatever it is, that you're going to accept this moment. And that just changed me. I just knew something different happened. God was working something different in my life. And that happened to be like the simple joy. Because, spoiler alert, joy and purpose is not happiness.
No.
And it's not like your job and what you do. It has something to do. Right. It's something simple. It's something that's quiet. It's mentioned in the Bible, 185 to 400, depending on the translation. But it's a simplicity, and it's something that's naturally occurring. Did I want to choose that? Choose life-giving, and hope and joy. And so that's what I really decided to do in that moment.
I think I read somewhere that you said you had another word for cancer.
Oh, right. Because I noticed that you have a testimony about cancer, and I decided I was going to call cancer Candyland. And the reason I did that is because I wanted people to pray for me, and I wanted them to pray for me specifically. Like, I wanted them to say, I am well, all my lymph nodes are clear, that it was a time, like a game, that I was walking through a part of life that I was getting through, like Candyland, and I was going to come out on the other side. I didn't want to go with this. So, cancer doesn't have the last word. And it can if you take on that word. And I was just clear, I'm not taking that word on. And people, thought that was strange, right?
Yeah.
Because there is that is what we know, whether it's somebody passing or our own devastation, there's some lesson in it, something that God is doing. There's something that's happening, and we don't know that bigger picture. But when you, I love that you ended on that, because that is rejoicing. I just say that because we talked about this also again today in the marriage, this rejoicing, this gratitude.
Yes.
You know, if we call it, we can call it whatever we want. We can call it praise. We can call it rejoicing. But it shifts everything. It shifts the atmosphere. It shifts that you're speaking life. You're giving life-giving words. You're speaking life over things. And that encourages the fuel of the heart to make it through these times and to give light, like you say, in this darkness, in the darkness of the world. Where we need to be prepared, you know, we need that.
I have a quick question, because I was just reading something that you shared about while you was in the church in Charleston and working part-time and fostering and human trafficking advocate homes.
Yeah.
Now, did the cancer happen before that or after you had began working with that?
Before that. Right. It happened before that. And that was why, you know, I lost my job. And so that, yeah, I did. After I lost my job, I took on this full-time job of being a small group women's leader in my church, leading Serve Day. We have a Serve Day once a year, and taking on community service. Okay, so I became volunteer as my job, and in that, I found another job, which was, you know, everywhere we'd go, they say, well, why don't you come and work here? So I ended up serving at the human trafficking place, which was somewhere that we felt called to do. And then they asking me to stay on and to be with the girls and to be a house representative with the girls and just encouraging them, doing life with them, and just, you know, ministering in everyday life in everyday ways. And so that became, you know, how God was working.
Were these girls the girls that were rescued?
Right, God. Right. And they, and talk about darkness and being a light and trying to not only maintain my light, but to share that light in difficulty of their stories and in a very specific way that you have, because you don't have the power. Although this was an intentional group that was faith-based, right? And we were allowed to, we got together and we prayed. We weren't allowed to go in and just pray to them, because, you know, sometimes those fundings it's not faith-based. You have to have your own strong faith-based purpose to be there and reason to be there.
Right.
And so, yeah. And then from there, a separate community service at a foster care. It was for teenagers that became pregnant as youth and their children. So then it was just ministering to them again through everyday life and through being. So how do you be joy? You know, how do you be purpose? Like, how do you convey a message to people? Well, I have to say too, in your job, as like, if you can speak to that, because it struck me immediately that, you know, you're staying in your purpose, even though, you know, you're a judge, you're staying also in your purpose of what you're here to do. And I don't think of purpose. I don't want to, you know, again, it's not what you think it is. It's more about being that, having that in your heart and letting it spill over, rather than, oh, I've got to go seek my purpose and find my parachute.
That is so good that you said that, because back there when I got saved, I had no idea I would be doing what I'm doing today.
I know.
But he put the characteristics in me, the integrity, the compassion, everything I was going to need, because I chose to follow him. He filled me what I needed for this point right now, that I was equipped. He says he'll equip us for whatever he has us to do. Because
because we, you know, he is the one. He came also, he was my gift in 2020. So he came back into my life in 2020. So he came in to go with me to the surgery, and then to tell me about this life coaching program, and then to sort of bolster me in that and getting us here. And so I want to say we trade back and forth in how we do that with one another.
So LesLee, can you introduce to us this mighty man of God who came back into your life?
I will. This is my husband, Steve Dale Rogers, and he's a life mastery coach. And I wanted to bring you on just to, of course, to introduce you to the listeners because I've been speaking about you and about our connection.
Yes. And you guys came from that marriage conference here at the Christ Community. And so what did it do? What did you bring from that marriage conference?
You know, so it just, you know, being a man of God, I guess, like you say, you know, I realized, wow, I got a lot of work to do here. And willing really to do it, you know. So you know, a lot of times, you know, I like to, you know, do things myself, figure things out myself. Sometimes that's okay, but a lot of times it hurts me, you know. So being, you know, aware of that and willing to change that is, I think, probably the number one thing that I really gained from that, you know, be a member of the church and, you know, just to accept help, receive it, and trust, you know.
So LesLee, okay, what was that last part that you wanted to share to our viewers?
Well, I wanted to tie it together with what you were reading this verse about rejoicing always, and what that means to me as, you know, a Christian woman, as someone who wants to inspire, encourage people. We have to take that approach that we have to choose. Like Steve is talking about, you know, we rely on God, but we choose. We have a choice that is one of the gifts that God has given us.
Yes.
And that
free will.
Right, a free will. And if we can just choose. Sometimes even if you're on your knees and you just say, I'm open, you know, we have to open our hearts. Right?
Yes.
And that's where the rejoicing can come in. It says always.
Always.
Not just, you know, in the good times. Not what, you know, that is not, that's happiness. That's happiness. Yes. That's something different.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, I am so blessed that I got 2 in 1.
You did.
A double blessing. Well, upon that, we're going to count on 3 and say, stay in the race. 1, 2, 3.
Stay in the race.